chemistry, one of the key skills is to be able to separate substances. So what we mean by separate, it's not the same thing as breaking chemical bonds. When you have a mixture of different substances which are not chemically bonded together, you can separate them by a physical process. There are many ways to do this, and there are many reasons that you would want to do it. For example, if you have completed a chemical reaction and you have a mixture of products but you only want one of them. There are many different ways of doing this, and they all depend on finding a difference in physical properties between them, the things you want to separate. The main properties used to separate substances are boiling point and solubility. One of the key skills for the exam is being able to choose the right separating method. So first, let's say that you want to separate a mixture of solids. If one of the solids is soluble and the other is insoluble, then very easily what you can do is you can dissolve the mixture. Only the soluble solid will dissolve. You then filter to remove the insoluble solid. You then have to wash the filtrate to remove any traces of the dissolved solid. Then you can dry the filtrate. That will give you the filtrate. It depends on what you're trying to get. If you want the insoluble one, then your process is done. If you want the soluble one, then you will then need to remove the water. You do that by crystallization. And crystallization, if we think about the marking points for what you need to say for crystallization, you will heat it up to the crystallization point, not until it's drying, just until the crystallization point. Then you will allow it to dry and form crystals. Then you have got your soluble solid. Okay. So that is how you separate two solids that are soluble and insoluble. What if they're both soluble though? If they're both soluble, you will have to use chromatography. I already have a video on chromatography. You can go and watch that for more details. But the short version is that chromatography can separate mixtures of soluble solids that are dissolved in a liquid. What about separating liquids? Well, if you want to separate liquids, and this could either be separating the liquid from a mixture of a dissolved solid with a liquid, or separating a mixture of liquids. Well, you have to separate them by using the property of their boiling point. And to do that, you use distillation. There are two types of distillation. Simple distillation is used to separate a liquid and its soluble solid. So for example, if you have salt dissolved in water and you want to get the water, what you do is you boil the water until it becomes a gas in a distillation apparatus that looks like this. You boil the water until it becomes a gas. The vapor gets passed through a piece of apparatus called a condenser. The condenser lowers the temperature and cools it back down into a liquid. You can then collect the pure liquid in another collection vessel on the other side. It will leave behind the solid, the dissolved solid, and it will collect the pure liquid. Of course, it depends on the liquid that you want to separate, what temperature you need to heat it up to. If it is water, it is 100 degrees Celsius or above. If you have a very simple mixture that you know the boiling points for example, ethanol and water, which you would get when you ferment things, you can, by carefully controlling the temperature, evaporate one of them but not the other one, and you can separate them that way. However, if you have a more complicated mixture, or if you have a mixture of liquids, then you can use fractional distillation. Fractional distillation is used to separate crude oil, and fractional distillation is the very similar setup to simple distillation, but you include a piece of equipment called a fractionating column. And a fractionating column is cooler at the top and warmer at the bottom. So the solution is heated to the lower boiling point where the material will evaporate. So for example, ethanol will evaporate at 78 degrees Celsius. As it passes up through the fractionating column, it cools down and will condense. And different liquids will condense at different points in the fractionating column. So that is a way of separating liquids that will mix together. Right? That is often used for crude oil. So they are the separating methods that you need to know for IGCSE chemistry. Pretty short video today. There is another video on chromatography, as I mentioned before. There's also a video on purity, which is a linked topic to this. That is also linked at the end of the video. So go and watch that one as well. All right, thanks for watching.